You didn't think that Sora was the only one whose story we were going to touch on for this tale, did you? No, there is another person that we have to talk about. And his name is, of course, Riku. The actual Riku, the real Riku, not Riku replica. For after you complete Sora's story in Chain of Memories, you can start a new game on a completed save file with Sora's story and play as Riku to see what happens to him. And this mode on Chain of Memories is called Rebirth. It is present on both the Rechain of Memories for the PlayStation 2 and the one on the remakes and on the GBA. And yes, you get to play as Riku in this version, and a couple of the differences between this mode and Sora's mode. So in Sora's mode for the card combat, you were pretty much free to put together whatever kind of decks you wanted to. In Riku's mode, in Rebirth, you were given preset decks for each location that you visit and each boss fight. So each location and boss fight, you're having to learn how to play the game with the deck that they give you. It offers a little bit of a wrinkle. Riku also has this system with dark points where when you break cards, you can accumulate dark points based on the difference between the cards that are broken and the card that you played. When you reach a certain threshold, you can transform into Dark Riku and perform all kinds of dark slights depending on what 3-card combos you throw in. So playing through the game as Riku is really a balancing act between managing your dark points, managing your slights, and making sure you don't bleed your pre-made deck dry of cards using slights, because the pre-made decks are all you have and you can't add cards to them. So I think that's an interesting mechanic. It can be a little bit frustrating at times, but in my opinion, while I enjoyed the story of Sora, I really think when you play through Riku's story, that this is where the meat and potatoes are, because this ties into a lot of stuff that's going to happen between the end of this game and the start of Kingdom Hearts 2. Sora's story is like the main course, I guess you could say. It's the dinner that you order at the restaurant, but I hope you left room for dessert, because Riku's is the wonderful dessert that is left after the end of the main course. And I think in a lot of ways it's been argued, and I can see the points, that Chain of Memories is in fact Riku's game, despite this being a much shorter version. So the game starts and Riku comes in, and we see him in a white grayish void area, and there's a mysterious voice talking to him. We can't really identify whose voice it is. Normally, when voices are talking to Riku, it normally implies that we're dealing with Ansem, we're dealing with the darkness, something like that. So a voice is talking to him and wakes Riku up, and the voice offers him a choice.
Where am I?
Stay asleep.
Who's there?
You should remain asleep. Here, between light and dark.
Between what? The king! Where's the king? Together we close the door to darkness. After that?
You came drifting here by yourself. You did not have the strength to overcome the darkness. Or maybe you were close to it.
As if I'm some kind of demon.
Turn from the light. Shut your eyes. Here, blanketed by the darkness, sleep is safety. Sleep is eternal. But
oh, what's this?
it is a door to the truth. Take it and your sleep ends as you take the first step toward the truth. But know this, the truth will bring you pain. Will you still go? There is no return to the security of sleep.
This seemed like a boring place to take a nap anyway.
That was very well said, Riku.
Well, from what we know about Riku, obviously he chooses to leave and confront his demons because that's what Riku does. He doesn't shirk, he doesn't step down from a challenge, and he decides to leave and challenge the parts of himself that were not so great in Kingdom Hearts 1. And when this happens, he's presented with a card that when he touches it, it transports him in a blinding flash to the basement of our favorite castle, Castle Oblivion. He's in the lobby area of our familiar Castle Oblivion lobby before you use a memory card on a door to go into the memories. And Riku uses this card to open a door to his memory and finds himself in Hollow Bastion, as the voice explains to him how the rooms of Castle Oblivion will let him see his memories. And whereas we kind of start from the beginning of Sora's journey when he leaves the island and goes to Traverse Town, we're kind of starting backwards with Riku. Hollow Bastion is the first place that he goes when Destiny Islands are destroyed in KH1. And Maleficent is the first person that he meets. So Riku spends his time exploring Hollow Bastion, and as he wanders through the castle, he wonders aloud to himself why he doesn't see anyone he knows. And this voice comes back to speak to him once again, and the voice tells him that in his pursuits in Kingdom Hearts 1, he cast aside his friends and embraced darkness, and we know that this happened because he allowed Ansem to take over his body. This was implied in the first cutscene of Kingdom Hearts 1, where when Sora finds the Keyblade when their island is destroyed. So because he casts his friends aside and embraced darkness, his memories will only allow him to see people that are associated with the darkness. And Riku counters. He says, well, I cast aside the darkness too. And the voice continues to taunt him further, saying his first home now is the darkness. His heart has only known how to cast things aside, meaning his whole life he's just kind of tossed things to the side in pursuit of his own selfish goals, which, again, we've seen that of his characterization in Kingdom Hearts 1. And his heart is hollow except for the darkness that remains there. That is why he does not see anyone. But he eventually does meet someone in Hollow Bastion. He meets the memory of Maleficent. And of course he would, because Maleficent is the Disney character most closely associated with the darkness in Kingdom Hearts 1. So, of course, she would be the one that he meets. She was the one that found him originally, and she's associated with the darkness. So his heart is capable of remembering her. And she tries to fill his head with the same poison that she attempted to in Kingdom Hearts 1 and get him to embrace the darkness. But Riku challenges her and ultimately defeats her, escaping the memory of Hollow Bastion. As he leaves his memory of Hollow Bastion, another voice addresses him. And while he's in Hollow Bastion, the voice is just text that crawls across the screen during the cutscenes. This voice is spoken.
Why do you shun the darkness?
Come on, I know you heard me. Every word I said to Maleficent.
Darkness is your weapon. It is time you learned you must accept it.
What do you mean?
Stop resisting. Accept the darkness. You have no choice. If you are to serve me again.
And the voice addresses him, asking why he rejects the darkness and urges him to give into it and use it so that Riku may serve him again. And it is, of course, none other than Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, appearing out of a portal in front of Riku. But this is all very confusing. We defeated Ansem in the first game. How can this possibly be? How can he still be here? One quick side note before we go any further. Unfortunately, Billy Zane is no longer voicing Ansem throughout the rest of the series. From now on, it's Richard Epcar, who still does a really great job. But man, Billy Zane killed it in Kingdom Hearts 1. So let's pour one out for our boy, Billy Zane. As Ansem taunts Riku just before they're about to confront one another, a floating ball of light appears in front of Riku and speaks. And it speaks in the voice of King Mickey. He encourages Riku to not give in, that the light can always be found, and tells him he's not alone. And this is really the first major fight of Riku's story. You fight Ansem in a battle that's designed to teach you the different mechanics and teach you the different way that the cards work in Riku's story. And really, this is a representative of Riku being able to use these dark powers, is representative of him having this inner struggle inside of him with this darkness that he let in. So you finish the fight, it ends in a draw. Ansem's not really trying, but Ansem offers Riku more cards with his memories before he leaves, and he tempers and awakens the darkness in his heart, saying that he just left that there as an option for Riku, that Riku can use it if he feels like he needs the power. And he leaves, he fucks off to plot the next time he's going to come and fuck with us. So as Riku sends to the next floor of Castle Oblivion, we transition to a scene in a darker version of the room the organization members met in. So if you remember in Sora's story, we had this white room with this big orb in it where they were watching Sora's progress, and Axel, Larxene, Marluxia, and Naminé were there during a vast majority of the cutscenes. Well, this one's like the exact opposite. Since they're in the basement, it's not as lit. It's shaded with like these dark blues and these purples. And we meet a couple of different members of the organization.
Don't I even warrant a hello, Lexius?
What is going on here, Zexion? I want an explanation.
Nice to see you too, Vexen. It's such a shame. The organization used to be the rope that bound us together.
You're only number 6. How dare you?
Let it go, Vexen. Zexion, tell us. What did you detect?
Visitors. I picked up 2 scents in the castle's lowest basement. One of them was Maleficent.
Don't be absurd. The witch is gone. She cannot return from the realm of darkness of her own volition.
If you would let me finish. The scent belonged not to the real Maleficent, but to a very convincing double. But I truly cannot say much beyond that, since the double is no more. Our other visitor saw to that.
And who is it?
I do not know for sure, but the scent was very similar to that of the Superior.
And yet, not exactly the same, was it? This truly piques my curiosity.
Now, what to do?
We wait. See what develops.
As of right now, they sense something that's arrived in the basement, but they don't know what's going on. And I think it's very telling that Zexion makes a comment that this scent of darkness, it's not a literal scent, but people that have been steeped in the darkness can kind of smell it and sense it on each other. And this concept will come back a couple times throughout this story. But he says it's interesting that Riku has the same scent as one referred to as the Superior. We know they're working for the organization, so the Superior has to be somebody who's higher up the chain. It's very interesting. So same thing with Sora's story. I'm not going to go through each of the individual world stories because, again, they're pretty much B-plot. All the important stuff happens in the floors between. So Riku ascends the next floor, and instead of a ball of light this time, an apparition of Mickey Mouse appears before him, and Riku and Mickey spend a couple of minutes talking. Mickey says he's trying to reach him and encourages him to, fight the darkness, not give in, to embrace the light, and not let the darkness define him as a person. And this gives Riku hope that he can be on the right path and kind of figure out how he can deal with this problem that he's having. And Riku promises Mickey that he's going to try and stay on the right path. And Mickey says he's actively trying to reach him. So we're not sure where Mickey is right now, but he's actively trying to get to where Riku is. They were obviously separated in the realm of darkness. We're not exactly sure how that happened or even how him and Riku escaped. So we're going to have to kind of figure that out as we go along. As Riku's making progress, we transition back to our organization friends. Zexion discovers the true identity of the basement visitor and says that it's Riku. And the darkness on him explains why this scent is so familiar to the Superiors, which we have to think that the Superior has to be linked to Riku somehow because Zexion keeps making these statements. And we know that the link to the darkness that Riku has is Ansem. So there must be some link between Riku, Ansem, and this superior figure that they're talking about. Vexen isn't really surprised by this. He says this makes sense, seeing that his heart is resonating with another hero who just entered the castle. And of course, Vexen is talking about Sora. Zexion is surprised that Sora arrived and no one bothered to let them know. And Vexen goes on to explain that Marluxia is already enacting his plan that we saw in Sora's story to use Naminé to manipulate Sora and his memories to get them to serve the organization. And this is kind of where the individual ambitions of the different organization members are highlighted here. Vexen isn't really interested in this, and he detests Marluxia. And Zexion and Lexaeus are kind of doing their own thing as well. So Vexen decides that he wants to go test Riku, and he states that Riku's existence is much more valuable than Sora's. So here we have individual groups of the organization not talking to one another, pursuing their own goals, and each having kind of their own ambitions as to the way they want to accomplish things. And this group in the basement decides they should go for Riku. At least Vexen decides for them that they should go and utilize Riku's existence somehow. So Vexen appears in front of Riku as he progresses through the castle, and Riku immediately asks him if he's with Ansem, because up until this time, the only person that Riku has met other than Mickey is Ansem, and Vexen obviously wouldn't know Mickey. He looks too sinister for that. Vexen chuckles and responds interestingly here. He says that Riku is only half correct, and that he is not the Ansem that Riku would be familiar with. He is Ansem, and he is not Ansem. And as Vexen kind of pontificates on what that means, he says that perhaps a nobody best conveys the idea that he walks the twilight between light and darkness, which this kind of strikes a chord within Riku because he's basically trying to do the same thing. But again, we have this concept of a nobody that comes up, and when you read the text on screen with the captions on, the word nobody is once again capitalized. So here we have even more proof that Riku is linked to Ansem, and Ansem is linked to this person that the organization refers to as the superior, and seems to have some kind of connection. Whether it's familial, we're not exactly sure yet. Vexen and Riku clash because, of course, they do. You fight organization members, that's what happens. And Vexen states that during his clash that Vexen sensed that there is a powerful darkness growing inside of him. He thanks Riku for helping him collect the data, and then he withdraws, just leaving Riku confused, like, what the hell is going on here? Riku continues his journey, and we return to Zexion and Lexaeus, and Zexion comments on how Sora's memories are continuing to be shuffled as they speak, but as with Vexen, Zexion and Lexaeus are uneasy, and they're very suspicious of what Marluxia and Larcene's intentions are, and they're really not sure what Axel's doing here. Axel seems to be the one piece of the puzzle that doesn't quite fit in, and we kind of see this in Sora's story because Axel has his own agenda to kind of mess up Marluxia's plan, as we can see, and Zexion and Lexaeus are not really sure what's going on, and they decide to tell Vexen so that he can clean up this mess now that his quote-unquote replica is ready from the data that he used from the battle with Riku. And of course, so we can infer that we already know that Vexen made the Riku replica, so it's very easy to draw that line to Vexen gather the data he need in this battle to make that replica. This also kind of highlights this organization, that there's kind of a hierarchy here, and that Vexen seems to be one of the more higher ranking members of the organization, because he's kind of like making decisions, and sometimes this ranking is enforced, sometimes it's not, but the members of the organization definitely have a certain ranking in which they operate. So Riku continues on, and he finally sees what Vexen meant by gathering data. He encounters his own replica. And even though Riku calls the replica a fake, which is what he starts out doing, he says, "You're a fake, you're not real," the replica claims it's not a fake, that just because Riku claims to be real doesn't mean he's better. The Riku replica makes the argument that because he has embraced the darkness while Riku runs from it, that makes him able to do whatever he wants, which makes him better. Because Riku is trying to hold the darkness at bay and run from it. So this fight happens, Riku defeats his clone and taunting it as he does, because that's what Riku does, but Riku replica says he's still new in learning his body and he will continue to get stronger. The replica overcomes him with darkness and laughs at Riku as he leaves. The Riku replica returns to the 3 organization members to report on this fight, and Vexen asks if he would like to meet Sora, which the replica agrees and says Sora won't be a match for him. So we can kind of see lining up the points at when things happen in Riku's story versus when things happen in Sora's story. So at this point, Sora hasn't met the Riku replica yet. He hasn't had that confrontation where they're both there for Namine. Namine hasn't planted that fake memory in the Riku replica's head yet, but Riku has already fought this. So this is when this happened. So the stories are a little bit staggered. It seems to be implied that Riku arrived at the castle a little bit before Sora did, or at least that maybe Sora took longer getting through the castle than Riku did because Riku's story is shorter. So Riku progresses through yet more memories. He's chasing after the replica up another level, and he's yelling and taunting for the fake to show itself. But it is not the Riku replica who shows itself, but Ansem. And Ansem tells him that the replica isn't a fake, but it should be an example of what Riku should strive to be. A person who accepts the darkness fully rather than fears it and rejects it. Ansem is this very real manifestation of the literal darkness. It's a literal living reminder of the sins that Riku has committed. And when he talks to Riku about embracing the darkness, we see, despite the fact that I'm not telling you guys like a lot of what Riku says or a lot of the dialogue here and just kind of the general story beats. And I think that Riku having this literal embodiment of the darkness he's trying to fight and control is very powerful. And I think that's what makes this story resonate with a lot of people. It's not just a physical thing that Riku's trying to fight in his heart. It's the mistakes that he's made and the way he feels his friends feel about him and trying to come to terms with the terrible things that he did in his past and move on from them. And as of right now, Ansem is hitting the point on the head when he's saying that Riku's not confronting these problems. He's running from them. It's not just darkness as the metaphysical force. It's the literal pain, the literal suffering, the literal trauma that Riku went through in making the decisions that he made in Kingdom Hearts 1. And I think this is what makes this story very powerful, because you can draw a similar line to people who are suffering through some kind of darkness or trauma, personal things in their own life that they're trying to wrestle with. So I think this is the start of why I think Riku's story arc is so compelling in this game, because it draws so many parallels to people who are actually suffering through things in the world. So it's here where we see, and if you notice too, Riku's story where we get a lot of the expanded politics and stuff that's going on between the organization members, which I think is very fascinating. Meanwhile, we see Vexen go to the upper levels of the castle to meet with Axel and Marluxia. And the purpose of this is to give the Riku replica all of Sora and Riku's memories, thus making him Riku, so that the Riku replica can see where they came from, so he seems more real. And the replica's there, and he rejects this. He's saying he doesn't want to be a wimp that rejects the darkness like Riku. He kind of goes rogue and decides to attack Larxene, who just knocks him back, and as she's approaching him, tells Namine to reshuffle his memories as he screams in terror at her approach. It's a real guttural scream from the Riku replica. And after messing with his memories, Larxene and Namine have a discussion that Riku replica interrupts and tells her that he'll protect her no matter what. So we see that this is the moment where Riku gets the memory that he has to protect her no matter what happens. And as he leaves, Larxene comments on the progress Namine is making with Sora, replacing memories of Kairi with memories of her. And Namine says, it doesn't matter, these memories are fake, to which Larxene responds that when all of Sora's memories of Kairi are replaced with her, then she'll be somebody to someone and no longer just Kairi's shadow. Oh, the foreshadowing here is insane. But again, the plot threads are extending out. We're going to reconnect them when the time comes. So some time passes, both Sora and Riku are continuing to work their way through the castle. When we get back to Zexion and Lexaeus, so in Sora's story here, Axel just eliminated Vexen when Sora was in Twilight Town, which is what causes Zexion to state that he can no longer sense Vexen's darkness. And Zexion's not happy. Like, Obviously, the organization members have some disdain for one another. Certain members they don't like, but Zexion's not pleased that organization members are just killing other organization members. But Lexaeus says they can't worry about that right now because they have a bigger problem, and that's Sora, who easily weakened Vexen so that Axel could kill him, but was still under Naminé's control, and the memories of Naminé are the ones that are driving him forward. So Lexaeus is not at all that concerned about the death of Vexen, more than he's concerned with Marluxia's plan is starting to come to fruition. They try to figure out what to do about this, and by comments that Lexaeus makes, it seems obvious that he wants to eliminate Sora, but Zexion says they can't eliminate him because the Superior needs Sora for his plan. So Sora's an integral part to whatever the organization's ultimate goal is. So Lexaeus says that their only plan left to counter the Hero of Light is to acquire the Hero of Darkness, Riku. So we have Marluxia and Larxene trying to manipulate and bring Sora under their control, and now we have Zexion and Lexaeus trying to bring Riku under their control. As Riku emerges from another memory, he finds Lexaeus standing in his way, and Lexaeus taunts him and calls him a waste for having the power of darkness but being afraid to use it.
That scent. You're another one of those nobodies.
You've done well thus far. But to possess your powers and yet fear the darkness, what a waste.
I do not fear it.
I sense that you do. You're also capable of controlling the darkness. Cast away your useless fear. Open your heart. Embrace the darkness.
And if I say no?
Then you lose both light and darkness. And disappear. I, Lexius, will not yield to the frail heart of an infantile coward. Now, stop resisting. And let the darkness in!
Riku asks what happens if he refuses this power, and Lexaeus tells him that he'll have lost both the light and the darkness, and this is where Lexaeus brandishes his ginormous great sword. It's absolutely huge, and what we get from here is that Lexaeus very much feels like the muscle of Organization 13. He's that stereotypical, really strong guy, just based on how huge his sword is, and they fight, and Riku appears to overcome him, but Lexaeus hits him with the huge blow that sends him flying back and appears to knock him out. But as Riku's on the brink of consciousness, the darkness erupts out of him, and he teleports, he instant transmissions in the blink of an eye behind Lexaeus and cuts him down. And Lexaeus is shocked. He does not see this coming, and he apologizes to Zexion, who is not there, for picking this fight before he fades away, that Lexaeus realizes the danger that Riku truly poses and realizes before it's too late that he made a mistake picking this fight. So while Lexaeus is the strongman of the group, he's at least intelligent enough to know that this is not a fight that any of them should be picking. As he has this eruption of darkness, Riku awakens in his subconscious. He's just floating in darkness, and he hears the voice of Ansem telling him to allow him into his heart. And as Ansem approaches, the light of Mickey appears once again to ward off Ansem. And this is enough to drive the darkness away, but when Riku comes to, Mickey is nowhere to be seen. Some time passes. Zexion is alone in the room after Lexaeus is defeated, and this is when Axel arrives to discuss with him all the losses the organization has incurred. Vexen, Lexaeus, Larxene. So this takes place at the point after Sora has defeated Larxene. Axel posits to Zexion that Marluxia will be the next one to go for defying the organization and for targeting Sora for his own needs rather than what the organization wants. He says that if Marluxia was gone, they wouldn't need Riku to turn against the organization traitors anymore, and that Riku's just in the way. So if Marluxia's defeated, Axel's basically telling Zexion that Riku's just an obstacle that will become a problem. So it really is just better to take him off the board now. As Riku ascends another floor, the whole castle starts shaking, and this is when Zexion appears out of one of those corridors of darkness, and he appears to inform him that Marluxia has indeed been slain by the Keyblade Master Sora, and Zexion offers to take Riku to see him, but asks if Riku can truly face him with the darkness and Ansem still in his heart. And this is where Zexion offers him a card to go to Destiny Islands. Riku takes the card and proceeds to unlock the memory and go in, and he arrives on the island and tries to talk to his old friends like the FF gang and Kairi, but they all fade away, and Zexion is there in the memory with him, and he appears and tells him it's because he only has darkness and dark memories left in his heart, and accuses him of destroying his own home with the darkness in his heart. An apparition of Riku stands there facing him, and this apparition transforms into a towering Darkside Heartless that towers above and grows and grows and grows until it's looming over Riku. And the point of this being is very, very on the nose metaphor that Riku is the darkness. After defeating the dark side, Riku sees Sora, or a memory of Sora. But as Riku approaches Sora, Sora attacks him and says he knows exactly what Riku has become. And Sora bathes him in light from the Keyblade, and Riku floats through a white void, says he's fading away. So this is a memory of Sora, and we very clearly see one of Riku's biggest fears is that he wants to reconnect with his friend so badly, but he doesn't think that he can or is worthy to face him while he has these things in his heart. And this is a literal manifestation of that fear. As he's floating through the white void, though, Kairi appears and said he can't fade away, that no power can defeat him, not the light or the darkness, but either can make him stronger. Even darkness, if he can stand to stare into it and never look away, he won't be afraid of anything. Knowing that the darkness is there and telling him not to give in, not embracing it, but acknowledging that he has to live with it. And this will give him the power to escape. And it indeed does give him the power to escape. He summons the darkness and he cuts through the apparition, and it was revealed that Sora was actually Zexion, and accepting that the darkness was a part of him allowed Riku to use the power to overwhelm Zexion, who just barely manages to escape. And there's, like I said, there's so much metaphor and there's so much meaning in these scenes with Riku and confronting his darkness. And this is the first point in the series where we kind of get to see that we've been led to believe by Kingdom Hearts 1 that light is good and darkness is bad, but it's here as we experience Riku's story that we kind of get this thing that they're not one-to-one. There's a lot of gray area there, and just because darkness exists doesn't mean it's bad, and just because light exists doesn't mean that it's good. And the points that his Kairi apparition makes about him being able to look in the darkness and not look away and he won't fear anything is the difference, right? There's a difference between acknowledging the darkness and embracing it. And it's very much the same when you have trauma in your heart, right? You can either let the trauma and the darkness define you and embrace it and let it swallow you whole, or you can acknowledge that it's there and look at it, knowing that when something traumatic happens to you, you will probably always carry shades of that trauma with you for the rest of your life. But knowing that it's there and looking into it and being able to face it down and not let it define you really does give you true strength and is the first step to healing. Zexion is shocked by this, and he notices a change in Riku, and he says that he's never seen anyone wear the darkness the way Riku has, wear it like an article of clothing. And this is when Axel arrives with the Riku replica, and Axel tells the Riku replica that he can be his own person and convinces him to dispose of Zexion, which he does. He just fucking kills him right there.
What is he? No one's ever worn the darkness the way that he does. It's impossible. Oh yes, the replica, of course. We can use this Riku to defeat the real one. Axel?
Wouldn't you like to be real? All you need is the kind of power that the real Riku doesn't have. If you can get that, you can be a new person, not Riku, nor anybody else. You won't just be a copy of someone. You will be unique. Your own self.
Axel! What are you saying to him?
You know, he's as good a place to start as any.
You can't do this! No!
So sorry, Zexion. You just found out way too much.
And Riku continues to ascend out of the basement. Ansem is there, once again taunting him, saying that since he accepted the darkness, soon Ansem will be able to retake control. And Mickey appears once again to save Riku from Ansem. And it's actually Mickey. It's him in the flesh, saying that he told Riku he made a promise to find him and that Mickey fulfilled his promise. He's there to help Riku. And Riku is just so overwhelmed. He collapses. And this is really the first. Riku's a pretty hard character. Doesn't show a lot of emotion. He's very closed off. He's very closely guarded. He doesn't let a lot of people in, but this is the first time we see him soften up, and he's overwhelmed with relief that he doesn't have to be alone anymore. And Mickey gives him one more card to Twilight Town. So Riku receives the card to Twilight Town, and as he enters, similarly to what happens with Donald and Goofy every time Sora entered a memory, as they return into cards you can summon, Mickey is gone. He turns into a card as well, not being in this memory. And none other than Ansem appears to confront Riku once again. But something is off. Something is different about this encounter with Ansem. Riku says he's not the real Ansem. Riku can sense this because he says his scent is different than the Ansem inside Riku's heart. And Riku would know. Who would know better the feeling of the darkness of Ansem than Riku, right? And this person begins to explain, the person that looks like Ansem begins to explain that he was the actual person who guided Riku to face the darkness and enter Castle Oblivion. It was he who gave him the very first card when he was in the Grey Void. The man reveals himself in a flash, dropping the guise of Ansem, Seeker of Darkness. He is wearing red from head to toe. His face is bandaged. He's wearing an ornate shoulder piece. A very mysterious, interesting looking individual, cutting a striking figure from the usual black cloaked individuals that we've seen throughout this playthrough. Sporting red. He reveals his name is Diz. Diz comments on how Riku is special, how he's able to exist between the light and the darkness, and that soon he will meet Naminé, and he will have to choose. And once he's told this, Diz vanishes. Riku continues to stumble through the memory of Twilight Town. He comes to an old-looking mansion looking for Naminé, and this is when the Riku replica corners him. And the Riku replica notices that Riku is different this time around. He's not afraid of the darkness anymore. Riku, having gone through this transformation when visiting Destiny Islands, when encountering the memory of Kairi, and deciding to stare back at the darkness and not be afraid of it, that is where the change comes in. And because he's not afraid of it, he's able to utilize it to the point where it's not a danger for him. And when the Riku replica realizes this, he starts going nuts, losing his mind, screaming about how fake he is down to everything that he remembers. Everything is a fabrication. Even with his new strength, killing Zexion and sinking lower into the darkness, he feels empty and he feels like he doesn't exist. And as long as the real Riku exists, he'll never be more than a shadow. As Riku defeats the replica lays there, sinking into the darkness, and he bemoans his false existence and claim that he doesn't fear death. For what can happen to a fake when it dies? Where will his heart go? A person that isn't even a real existence to begin with.
So, it's over. Death doesn't frighten me. Good riddance to a phony life. My heart was never real. I'm sure even what I'm feeling now is probably all fake.
What are you feeling?
What happens when a fake dies? One like me. Where will my heart go? Does it disappear? It'll go somewhere. Maybe
To the same place as mine. A faithful replica until the very end. That's okay.
This is kind of a sad scene. I mean, after all, the Riku replica is the version of Riku we've, up until now, spent the most time with in this game. And another point of this is the struggle with Riku replica and his fake memories and his existence being based on somebody else brings in a lot of other philosophical questions, that the type of questions that Riku is struggling with in the darkness, the Riku replica is struggling with. What does it mean to exist when you're not real to begin with? And what is the meaning of life and all this other kind of stuff? And it's I appreciate Sora's story for what it does, but Riku's story really brings some heavy philosophical questions with it. So as Riku enters the mansion, he finds Namine, and Namine explains everything to him about how Sora lost his memories, about how Sora chose to forget everything that happened in the castle to get his memories back. And this is where we kind of get some clarity on where in the timeline this is happening. So Sora has already defeated Marluxia, and Sora has already chosen to enter the pod and have his memories restored. Namine gives him a choice as well. She mentions that there is darkness in Riku's heart, and that there's always the threat that Ansem will gain control again. But Namine could help him. With her powers, she could erect a wall around his heart and lock away the darkness so that Ansem could never again gain control. And Riku would forget all about the darkness and his memories associated with them, of all the terrible things that he did, essentially walling in the memories in Riku's heart and making it so he doesn't remember them. Obviously a very tempting choice for Riku, who is seeking redemption. But I think Riku realizes that there are no shortcuts when it comes to working on yourself and when it comes to seeking redemption for the things that you've done. So he declines. And rather than have Namine help him seal away the darkness, he chooses to confront Ansem instead of sealing it away. And then he's not afraid. And even if he is overwhelmed, he's stared into that darkness and not flinched, and that the darkness will ultimately show him the way. He also figures out, and I forget the context of this because I was writing down notes, that it wasn't Kairi who spoke to him in the light when we fought Zexion, just before we fought Zexion, when he was impersonating Sora. It was actually Namine in the form of Kairi, which again, the foreshadowing is very interesting here, but I can't say anything more about it. We'll get to that when we get to it. Riku leaves and he finds Mickey waiting for him outside, and Mickey is surprised to see that Riku chose not to sleep and seal away the darkness, saying that he heard it from Diz, who is actually waiting for them in the castle lobby. And this is where the mystery of Diz comes in. Riku asks Mickey if he knows who Diz is, and Mickey comments that he seems familiar, but he doesn't actually know who he is. So there's a potential here that Mickey knows this individual. I mean, after all, he is basically king of the universe. So it would make sense that Mickey would remember meeting somebody. In the lobby, Diz gives Riku and Mickey each one of the black coats of the organization. And he comments that these coats are more than just a fashion statement, that they're specially designed by the organization and can offer them some protection from the darkness. And this explains why the members of the organization are able to use these portals to warp around these, to traverse these corridors of darkness without falling prey to it, is that these cloaks offer some variety of protection from that. Diz also gives Riku one last card, saying that it will draw Ansem out of his heart for one final confrontation. Riku and Mickey press forward, ready to confront Ansem, but Riku asks Mickey to stay behind, saying that he must face Ansem alone. And the reason he argues this is he says that there's not really a lot of point in facing his inner darkness if he can't do it alone. He then asks Mickey that if the worst does happen, if Ansem takes over, he asks Mickey to please destroy him, which is a little bit dark, but Mickey refuses, saying that if that happens, he'll find a way to rescue Riku, to not worry about it. So Riku presses on to the next room, and he finally, for one last time, comes face to face with Ansem.
I smell you, Ansem. Show yourself!
I have watched you fight. I know your strength. Your skill with darkness has grown. It has become more mature. And yet why? Why do you accept the darkness, but still refuse me? You know you and I are similar. We both follow where the darkness leads. Indeed, we are the same. So why? Does some part of your heart still have a fear of the dark?
That's not it. The truth is, I just can't stand your foul stench.
You are a fool. You should know my powers well by now.
Yeah, I know. Or did you forget? I used all the power you had to give, and Sora still beat me. I'm not at all impressed with your powers.
Very well. In that case, you shall sink into the abyss!
Again, one of the most brutal fights in the game. It's very challenging. Just when Riku appears to be overwhelmed to be the point where he loses, he's able to rush forward and deliver a finishing blow. But even as Ansem fades away and says that even if Riku defeats him now, his dark shadow will linger and that he will return once again, saying this is not because he has a hold in Riku's heart. As Riku, struggling with this darkness, calls out to his friends, Mickey appears once again in a ball of light to help him, and he materializes to grab him and pull him out of the sinking darkness at the last minute. And this is really where Riku's story ends. Having stared down the darkness inside of him, unfearing, challenged it, and won. But this is just the first step of many on Riku's journey to come to terms with what he's allowed inside of him and the decisions he made as he grows up. So obviously, from here, with Sora being in stasis, Riku and Mickey decide that the best solution is to leave and look for answers elsewhere. And as the two walk towards Castle Oblivion, Mickey asks Riku what happens now, and Riku says, even though he stared down the darkness and won and defeated Ansem, he can still feel Ansem faintly inside of him. But Mickey counters this and says that it's not Ansem's darkness anymore. It's Riku's darkness, and it belongs to him, just like his light belongs to him. And this is surprise and growth from Mickey. Mickey is very much in the camp of light and very much a warrior of light and opposed to the darkness. But here Mickey says that up until now, he thought that the darkness was bad and should be eliminated. But seeing Riku choose a different road changed his mind to where there could be existence with a balance of light and darkness is not inherently evil. Mickey wants to walk that road with Riku and see where it goes, and Riku's very grateful. And throughout the whole game, Riku has been calling Mickey Your Majesty. Mickey tells him to knock that shit off, that they're friends now, and that Riku can just call him Mickey and not Your Majesty, which, big sign of respect. If the king tells you that you don't have to call me Majesty anymore, just call me by my first name. Riku and Mickey leave the castle, and they're walking the road in the middle of the grass field at night, the one we saw Sora, Donald, and Goofy walking when they first arrived in Castle Oblivion, when they run into Diz, and Diz stops them, and there appears to be two splitting paths, and this is done purposefully because Diz offers Riku a choice, and he claims that Riku must choose to either walk the road to light or the road to darkness.
What are you making me choose now?
Between the road to light and the road to darkness.
Neither suits me. I'm taking the middle road.
Do you mean the twilight road to nightfall?
No. It's the road to dawn.
Riku says that neither suits him. He's making his own path, and he's going to take the middle road, which he calls the road to dawn. And Mickey and Riku walk off down the path, leaving Diz standing there. And the credits roll once again. ending with another poem. Beyond the path, without you is a forgotten promise to keep. We may have walked side by side, but now we go on, back to back. And though our paths may not cross, all paths are connected somewhere. When I arrive at where you are, we may not appear as we were, but we'll make another promise to keep. This poem has so much foreshadowing in it, and if I remember it in the Kingdom Hearts 2 video, I'll bring it up, but god damn, I love it so much. And after that, credits roll. But that is not the last scene. We see one last scene of what appears to be a boy in Twilight Town with some of his friends. But not any boy that we're familiar with. Somebody new. A boy with blonde spiky hair. And just before the scene ends, he turns and we get to see his face. And he has big blue eyes and features similar to Sora. That is the conclusion of Riku's path in Chain of Memories Rebirth, shedding a lot of light on the struggles that Riku goes through and his escape from the Dark Realm, which we're still not really sure how that happened. We know that Diz had a hand in it, but Diz obviously guided them to the basement of Castle Oblivion once they had escaped. But how did they escape? We will probably find more answers in Kingdom Hearts 2, as the secret Ansem reports there do shed a lot of light on the events that happened in Chain of Memories and in Kingdom Hearts 2, so that'll be interesting. I have some closing final thoughts on the game before we wrap things up and summarize where we've left off in the story so far. As I stated in part 1, this is definitely a game of two halves. The combat portion really starts to slog about halfway through the game, not to mention the questionable card mechanics that can be exploited. However, I think the story portion is really where I personally underrated this game and where it really, really shines. And it really establishes a pattern ongoing in the KH series. The numbered titles always feel like this large, grand adventure that stretch across the multiverse and has the fate of all existence at stake. And the in-between titles, for the most part, feel like these more intimate moments of storytelling where they're a little more scaled down and they focus more on character and things going on. And I really like that about these smaller in-between games. Despite the fact that we travel to all the different worlds from the first game, the entire game takes place in the singular location of Castle Oblivion, allowing for the game to focus on not so much where we're going, but where we are and what is happening. KH1 or even KH2 aren't able to tell such a focused story on Sora or even Riku for that matter, or involve all of the political intrigue between the members of the organization, just because those games are focused on showing off more of the worlds and kind of the overarching plot of Kingdom Hearts. And mentioning Riku for a moment, getting Rebirth was a shock. I mean, after what happened in Kingdom Hearts 1, not many expected to be able to get an entire playable section after completing Sora's story that featured Riku, but we got it. And I think I mentioned it while describing Riku's part. I think that Riku's story is more compelling in this game than Sora's. I made a couple point on Sora quickly in his story. We really see him in a light that we don't get to see him in the rest of the series going forward until it builds towards the climax. For most of this game, Sora is manipulated, he's tricked, he's on his back foot. The organization members are really in control till Sora overcomes them with his power and wrests control of what's happening away from them. Towards the end of the game, he's super irritable. He's super irrational concerning his false memories of Naminé, when normally he's very calm and collected and optimistic despite being naive. It's a unique departure from his character, and I think for him it's definitely a growth moment for him as well. Riku's story, on the other hand, is nothing short of a representation of everyone's physical and mental struggle with some kind of darkness inside of them. Throughout his story, he continually dwells on the past, the decision he's made, and how they define who he is. But by the end, he comes to realize that even though these things happened, everyone's darkness is a part of them, and it's not anything to be ashamed of. You can carry it with you, but it doesn't mean that it has to define you. And most of the times, you will carry that with you for the rest of your life. It'll always be a little bit of a scar. Time heals all wounds, and you can obviously learn to deal with it. But you can either let it control you, or you can stare into it as he did, without fear, and continue to walk the path towards healing. And that's what Riku chooses to do. He chooses to walk the path to the dawn and to begin that healing process. And that's very powerful, and it's not always an easy step to take. To realize that life isn't a binary, there's a gray area there, and that you don't just choose to get up and walk in the good, the happy feelings. You have to work your way to get there, and you can walk that road in between the happiness and the darkness you feel inside of you. And I think that message is why I think that Riku's arc narratively is much better, because Sora kind of maintains his optimism throughout the series, despite things happening to him, where Riku really has to learn how to deal with the decisions he made in the first Kingdom Hearts and how to live with this trauma and this darkness inside of him that really altered the trajectory of his life. Another thing Chain of Memories does really great is it reinforces these themes of duality, and there's a lot of them here. And what I mean by the theme of duality is that there's no one right way of looking at things, or the way that things may initially seem are not always what they turn out to be. And this is referenced in the term chain of memories, for example. The members of the organization refer to Sora being trapped by a false chain of memories, which would seem like a bad thing, that memories weigh people down and ensnare their heart and choose and influence the decisions they make, where Namine refers to memories like a chain when she manipulates people's memories, and that each memory is a link in a chain that can be restored or relinked and that define a person's heart. Riku's story deals heavily with the themes of duality, with different characters telling him he has to walk the path to the light and the path to the darkness. And here we see he doesn't even choose either of those. He chooses an in-between path to learn how to live with the darkness inside of him while choosing to be a better person. As the series continues on, we'll see this theme more, this kind of duality, this idea that things are not always as they appear. And Mickey even states it at the end. He says he grew as a character and as a person too, because he was convinced that light was the just and right way and that darkness was the evil way, destined to be eradicated. But even he sees going forward that even though darkness might not be the ideal force, that things should exist in balance, just as they do in nature. And the most interesting thing about Chain of Memories is that it's this thin middle chapter in the original trilogy that includes Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2. While you don't have to play Chain of Memories to understand Kingdom Hearts 2, I certainly didn't. I jumped right into Kingdom Hearts 2. I skipped over Chain of Memories completely. Your understanding of 2 and the story that the first 3 games are trying to tell is greatly enhanced with a playthrough of Chain of Memories. It's not the most fun thing to play through. Maybe you don't want to play through it. Maybe you just want to watch the cutscenes. But I do think that lore and that story is worth investing in because it enhances your enjoyment and experience of Kingdom Hearts 2. Looking back at Kingdom Hearts 1, I would say even 358 over 2 days benefits greatly from a playthrough of Chain of Memories, because some of the events of 358 over 2 days are happening concurrently with the events of Castle Oblivion in Chain of Memories, and they're referenced. And so that timeline kind of starts to line up with what the rest of the organization members are doing while this is happening, and we get a little bit more story about the characters in there. So this and 358 over 2 days are interesting entries in the series. So to wrap up the story so far, if you remember, we did this at the end of Kingdom Hearts 1. There are no journal entries like the Ansem reports that sort of build out the lore of this particular entry, but we do learn a lot of things, and there's not really any additional content in this game in the form of like extra boss fights, things to explore, stuff like that. It's pretty bare bones, but we do learn a lot of things that get added to the story, and this is the point where a lot of not Disney stuff starts getting added to the story, right? We only had 4 original characters to worry about: Sora, Riku, Kairi, and Ansem. All the rest were either Disney or Final Fantasy characters. But here, we are introduced a lot more to original Kingdom Hearts characters. And the bulk of those characters are from this group that we're introduced to, called the Organization, who are a mysterious collection of individuals that at times refer to themselves as fake, not real, nobodies not existing, that seem to have a certain goal in luring Sora to Castle Oblivion, which we learn that Marluxia ultimately wanted control of Sora so that he could overthrow the leaders of the organization. But the organization originally wanted Sora under their control anyways to achieve their own goals, which we understand to be interpreting the conversations that Axel had with Larxene. We understand to be something related to the understanding of the heart. And Marluxia and Larxene are put in charge of this endeavor, but they conspire to use Naminé to replace Sora's memories to manipulate and trap him. And we're also introduced to Naminé here as well, who is another original character to the series. And her connections to Sora aren't fully explained yet. She seems to have some connection to, even though not being on Destiny Island, she seems to have some connection to the original trio of heroes. And we're not really sure why she has this power to be able to manipulate memories, to take apart the chain of memories in people's hearts and insert things that weren't actually there. We also learned that at the end of Kingdom Hearts 1, Riku and Mickey were trapped in the Realm of Darkness. They were able to escape the Realm of Darkness somehow, a way that we don't fully understand yet. And with the help of another individual called Diz, they were able to make their way to the basement of Castle Oblivion. And the reason this worked was because, as explained in Riku's story, Riku's heart resonated with Sora's in Castle Oblivion, and then Mickey's heart was able to resonate with Riku's, and that's how Mickey ended up finding him. This outcome appears to be a part of Diz's plan, but we're not really sure what Diz's true motivations are, or even why he was here in the first place. He seems to have some knowledge of what happened to Sora, what Naminé is doing, that Sora's getting his memories repaired, but we're not really sure what Diz's role in this whole story is, or what his end goal is. He certainly doesn't appear to be aligned with the organization, but we're not entirely sure if he is aligned with our heroes as well. Speaking of our heroes, where does everybody stand right now? Where is everybody located at the end of this story? In terms of our main trio, Sora, Donald, and Goofy, they are all asleep. Naminé is putting their memories back together from the damage that she did, causing them to forget things. Riku went through this entire journey and seems to have a handle on his inner struggle for now, but Ansem still appears to be a very present and real threat who could emerge at any time again. So Riku obviously has some work to do on himself. He is now traveling with King Mickey. We're not entirely sure where they're off to. We just know that Riku is walking a better path, that Mickey is walking with him, and they're going on to whatever it is they're going to be doing in the next game. And the last most important thing is there are still unnamed lingering organization members, and their true goal is still unknown, and their true objective with Castle Oblivion is still kind of unknown. We know that they wanted to get Sora under their control, which is kind of what the point of Castle Oblivion was, but there seems to be more mystery to this castle that we haven't fully fleshed out yet. And we know there are still lingering organization members, despite the fact that Zexion, Lexaeus, Larxene, Marluxia, and Vexen were all killed by Sora or Riku or the Riku replica in some fashion. And the sixth member that was involved in this Castle Oblivion stuff, Axel, kind of disappeared afterwards. So we're not really sure what his status is either. But the end scene of Sora's story, we see a circular room ringed with thrones of different sizes. And there are black-coated individuals still sitting on these thrones, a fair number of them. So obviously they're still going to have some role to play in the future story, and we're not quite sure what their true objective is. But that's where things stand. That's where the story stands. And the rest of it, we'll just have to wait for the next installment of Guiding Keys. And then there's the question of this boy we see briefly at the end of Riku's story. A blonde-haired boy with blue eyes like Sora that appears to be in this new location called Twilight Town with his own group of friends. So there's a mystery there surrounding that person as well, which, again, once we get to our next installment, we should have more answers on, or maybe more questions, because with every answer, there seems to be 2 more questions, as is the Way of Nomura. That'll have to wait for the next installment of Guiding Keys, which we will finally get to one of my favorite games ever made, Kingdom Hearts 2. Guys, I'd like to thank you so much for joining me on another Kingdom Hearts journey. I fully didn't anticipate Chain of Memories being 2 parts, but the more I talked about the story and the more I developed it, I figured it would be prudent to split it into Sora's story and Riku's story. Not only thematically, but just for listening purposes. It's easier to listen to that than a 4-hour episode with everything, or however long that episode would have ended up being after I recorded everything. And just with the themes of duality and the dual protagonists between Sora and Riku, I felt giving each their own episode to shine was the right thing to do and touch on some of the themes. And there are a lot of themes, and there's a lot of stuff to come. Like I said, we're getting into Kingdom Hearts 2, which I just absolutely cannot wait to dive into that and talk about that. It's my favorite game of all time. I can guarantee you, with the way these things have been going, having to split these games into multiple parts, that Kingdom Hearts 2 will at least be a 2-parter, potentially even a 3-parter, depending on how much time I want to devote to that game. It is my literal one of my favorite games of all time. So that might be a very, very deep dive. We'll have to see. But again, thank you guys for listening so much. The support, the kind words about Guiding Keys have been incredible. And I've been dying to get these Chain of Memories episodes out for the last couple months. They've been done. I know it's middle of March by the time this comes out. I've wanted to drop these since the beginning of February, but I was patiently waiting because I'm sticking to my schedule, trying to build up some episodes so I have a little more breathing room throughout the year, because we're going to need it. Kingdom Hearts 2 is going to be a beefy playthrough, more beefy than Chain of Memories, and then there's going to be a lot of constructing what those episodes are going to look like. Can't wait to dive into it. Thank you for listening so much. If you'd like to find the show, you can go to the Linktree, linktr.ee/Unlockables podcast, that has my Twitter, which is at the One True Sire, my Instagram, which I believe is just at Unlockables podcast. That's where you can interact with me the most. Click on the link and join our Discord server. We have an awesome group of podcasters, of friends of the show, just genuinely great internet people talking about video games. Some of the finest people I've ever known. We have a good time. We have a good laugh. We talk about other stuff too. We talk about movies and TV shows and sports. And so there's a wide variety of likes that you can find in there. We talk about content creation and hobbies and podcasts and all that kind of stuff. So join the Discord server. It's an absolutely fantastic time. Some of the finest people that I've had the pleasure of getting to know the last couple of years are in that Discord server. So definitely join it and have a great time. I guess I can make the announcement now. I hadn't intended to do this yet. I was kind of waiting for March to roll around. Thanks to some eagle-eyed, stealthy fans, the secret's probably already out by now. The Unlockables podcast now has a Patreon. And I said a while ago that I wasn't going to do this, but I wanted to do it because I love this hobby, and I figured that if I ultimately wanted to be supported, that this would be the way to do it. And I offer a couple of tiers that I feel are pretty affordable, and I offer some extra content, some extra monologues, extra ramblings of things that I don't normally get to talk about on the show, but by subscribing, you'll be able to get access to a couple of those things. And I'm slowly building up that library of content. There's some interesting stuff. So the first tier is the Rare Unlock tier, starting at $3 a month, and this will get you some extra goodies here. It gets you access to an exclusive Discord channel in the Unlockables Discord. It gives you a special Discord designation as a patron. It gets you what I'm billing as pre-episode monologues. So every time I record an episode, I always do like a 10-minute monologue to warm up about a random topic. I'll record those and put those out. I have a couple of those already out on the retirement of Ash Ketchum from Pokemon and the rise of AI art. And there might be a couple other ones out by the time that this episode drops. And it gives you access to game reviews for games that I play in 2023. So every game that I do, every game that I play in 2023, I'll do a short little review and drop it on the Patreon for you guys to hear about the games that I'm playing. And if you want to be a part of that process and decide what I play this year, I'll also be posting polls to determine what I play next. So You guys can literally determine from the list of my backlog, and I'll put it on a wheel and have a certain amount to select every month or every time I finish a game. You guys can literally determine some of the games that I played this year and determine my fate. And I think that's really exciting. If you want to do a little more support, obviously all support is welcome, but there's one more tier above, which is the super rare unlock at $5 a month. This gets you everything in the first tier, in addition to 2 mini series that I'll be doing that are Patreon exclusive. The first one I'm calling Gotta Watch 'Em All, and this is going to be a Pokemon anime rewatch series in honor of our boy Ash being retired. I'm going to watch all 1,000 plus episodes of the Pokemon anime, and I'll be uploading reactions, recaps, thoughts on those episodes here. Probably do them in batches of like 2 to 4 at a time, just to make it a little more manageable. And I will also drop some exclusive full-length VIP episodes, things like top 10 lists, tier lists, and just any other randomness that I can think of. And those I want to hopefully do like one a month of a special episode, and maybe like one a month of a Pokemon rewatch. I'm still working that out. Like I said, I wasn't quite ready to announce it yet, but some Eagle Eye fans and Eagle Eye friends already spotted the Patreon and started supporting. So I got to figure that out. But if you feel so inclined to head over, check that out, support the show, I would be eternally grateful. I never in a million years imagined that people would do something like that. And I'm very, very humbled by the show of support already. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for supporting the show and making this dream just a little bit of a reality. I really appreciate that. So yeah, I think that's everything. That's all the housekeeping stuff. I've rambled on about that enough. So with that being said, until next time, when we dive in to Kingdom Hearts 2, may your hearts be your guiding key.